Hey y'all, welcome to Nashcraft with Brady, here to talk about RPG, philosophy, strategies for prepping or not prepping. Stay tuned. How much time do you spend prepping for your D&D game? Is it a few days before, the night of? Do you do it 2 weeks in advance? How far ahead are you planning things out, designing the dungeon or the encounters or the dialogue or the NPCs' names and every single little minute detail that you can think of? How much time do you spend crafting all that stuff? And I'm not here to naysay any of that, of course, because I myself used to do that back when I used to not have kids that ran around the house and, had their own needs, of course, but that's just how things go. You find yourself in a different sort of constraint of your time. And I think that it's just a good part of this conversation to make sure that we're setting expectations for what kind of advice we're trying to give and receive. And I'm trying to also echo something that I saw the basic expert talk about, and I totally agree with him because he talks about, I don't want to spend, days and days on end doing this. Essentially, I'd like to be impactful when I do it and to also be usable. So with our limited time, let's try to make it impactful. And for starters, you're going to know your group better than any other DM, and therefore you can sort of cater to maybe what they're going to be more privy to. For instance, if they're really more of a dungeon crawly group, maybe don't bother too hard with a bunch of that murder mystery or political intrigue stuff, right? Like, they're not going to bite it, so don't waste your time building that whole encounter and trying to plan for that, essentially, right? You can mostly guess what they're going to do, and maybe even ideally you can get them to commit to what they're going to do the session prior to the one you're going to run. So that way you're not really having to worry about the political intrigue thing if they chose not to bite on that bit at the previous session, that no, they're just going to go into the gloomy caves or whatever. So therefore, only worry about the gloomy caves. They really need better names. And if you really like that political intrigue stuff or murder mystery, weave it out slowly throughout the dungeons or vice versa in that case. And so that way you can sort of hit your little DM scratch for creativity, as well as also, having this shared experience with what your players also enjoy. All right, now tip number 2, or if we're going tips now, lighten the load on yourself. I am such a big advocate of adventure modules. That's why I try to review them on the channel, because they are so helpful in running games on the fly or needing to insert something, or in case you are still building out weeks in advance, you can still stitch things from other people's ideas in case you really like it or want to expand off it even. It's not even just about stealing all the time, but still steal. Like, this is what this is all about, is creativity and DJ remixing, essentially. It's like we're like the pretty lights of, TTRPGs, essentially. So I think adventure modules and pre-written adventures are a great thing to utilize, and I'm going to steal some verbiage from my wife, who uses this word or phrase in her professional development, and it's about being able to facilitate sessions for professional development, and she'll use the word internalize. You have to internalize whatever session you're going to be coaching or teaching these other people, right? And I think that's a good word to use, and so that way, when you're prepping, if you know that they're going to go to the gloomy caves and all you've done is rip it off of somebody else, all you have to do is read the pre-written thing and internalize what could possibly happen in this encounter. You should not have to make it up from scratch, and maybe some adventures are written better than others, and that's sort of fair. But it's still a big giant load off your shoulders about having to plan out all the encounters, the random encounters, or what kind of loot are you expecting, and maybe you can reskin some of the stuff as you go on the fly sometimes, because you'll know where it fits into your campaign world. But really, that's the whole point. You can use it as you see fit, and then that's what's beautiful about the whole thing. And that third thing, as I'll jump off of the description inside the dungeon, is those random encounters. Embrace them. They are your friend. Because once again, you're able to keep things lively and unexpected for yourself as well as you're proceeding through this dungeon and or whatever encounter that or whatever situation that you're finding yourself your party in. The random encounters can be part of that world building, the potentiality for those certain characters or enemies or NPCs to be in that locale that you're happening to be visiting at the moment. And random encounters, I'll also say, are much like some parts of D&D or RPGs in general, is a muscle. This muscle of improv, this muscle of on-the-spot creativity is a real thing. And the more you partake and engage with it, I would argue, the more you'll be adept at actually employing it and utilizing it and being able to interpret and almost like freestyle on the spot like a rapper or something, that you're just able to just conjure up and keep the momentum going of the free-flowing imagination. I think it was also on Professor DM's channel some while back where he talked about his sort of philosophy in pre-planning ahead and getting your players to tell you where they were going before they go there so that way you know exactly what you have to plan for. And it was his son that was like, well, I got all the time in the world. Like, I can do this whole world building thing, If that's what you like doing with your time as your hobby, like, yeah, go for it, And just some people have different obligations and different responsibilities, and that's totally fine. But it's just being real about what can be achieved with what little time we have, and to make sure we try to, be practical, be strategic about some of this stuff, and to not over prep into something that you are not even going to run, which is one of the worst feelings ever, right? So yeah, there's some of my thoughts on prepping, some tips or ideas or philosophy, strategies behind what I kind of do to be able to run multiple games in a week if I so choose, and with multiple players. And to, like I said, I steal from the best, isn't that what all the famous artists say all the time? So go ahead and do that for yourself, and maybe even pitch them a couple bucks in case you find something that you like, right? So that's what's beautiful about TTRPGs, is that it can be so modular in a sense, and that it is such a shared community of resources that's a wonderful tool to have. So get out there, keep crafting, and we'll see you on the next video. Adios, everyone.